Welcome to the 7th episode in the Making a Messiah series. If you have not seen the preceding parts, I suggest that you pause this video and return to it after catching up. So far, we have seen an overarching theme of just how little support the Old Testament actually contains for the assertions of the New Testament authors. Jesus does not fit the messianic blueprint. The gospel is not really a message of peace or love. The sacrifice of Christ does not qualify for any sort of sacrifice by the laws of God. But if the basis and background for Christianity reject these things about Jesus, what might it say about who the Christ character really is? Deuteronomy 13:1-5 gives a warning concerning a prophet who would come from the Jewish faith, perform miracles and wonders, and encourage God's people to turn away and worship other gods. In verse 3, Moses tells the followers of Yahweh, "You must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is the Lord your God you must follow, and him you must revere. Keep his commands and obey him. Serve him and hold fast to him." In other words, you can identify a false prophet by his teachings. If the individual violates or teaches others to violate the law of God, they are not truly sent from God. And of course, if even a single prophecy goes unfulfilled, the person is not a prophet. How does Jesus stack up in terms of obedience and prophecy fulfillment? First of all, let's talk about God's law. Psalm 119, 151-152 makes it very clear that the ordinances of the Hebrew God are eternal. They do not change, and they are meant to last forever. Deuteronomy 4:2-4 says, "Do not add to what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord your God that I give you. You saw with your own eyes what the Lord did at Baal Peor. The Lord your God destroyed from among you everyone who followed the Baal of Peor, but all of you who held fast to the Lord your God are still alive today." Needless to say, God was serious when he emphasized strict obedience to the Mosaic law. You disobey, you'll be destroyed. You obey, and you'll survive. Matthew 12:1-5 tells of how Jesus defends his disciples when they want to pick grain on the Sabbath. The funny thing is that Jesus violates one of the 10 Commandments by doing this, for as it says in Exodus 20:10, "You shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates." Exodus 31:14-16 explains the extent to which God wants obedience to the Sabbath law, stating twice that violations of it are to be punishable with death. And if you don't think picking grain is justifiable as work, you might want to read Numbers 15:32-36 also, where God commands the murder of a man for gathering wood on the Sabbath. Jesus teaches against the food laws in Mark 7:18-19, where he declares that no food is unclean. Leviticus 11 gives a long list of the forbidden animals, and although the punishment isn't as severe as it is for working on the Sabbath, God makes it abundantly clear that eating unclean meat defiles a person and is detestable to him. Christ preaches some questionable things on honoring parents in Matthew 10:35-37 and Luke 14:26 too, and another apparent disregard for one of the 10 Commandments. Christians are fond of quoting Matthew 5:17 in defense of their disobedience to Old Testament law. In it, Jesus says that he came to fulfill the law, not to abolish it. But as we've just seen, Jesus actually failed to observe a number of God's laws. This is ironic, since 2 verses later, Jesus says that anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Unsurprisingly, Jesus did not get along with Jews who stressed devout observance of the Mosaic law. In the Gospels, he frequently shames and insults the Pharisees, a religious sect with many members on the high Jewish court known as the Sanhedrin. To believers, Christ came to set the legalists straight, condemning them for taking the law so literally and missing the quote-unquote big picture. However, it is pretty strange that God would choose to oppose a group that so faithfully upheld his laws, as he himself demanded his people to do in Scripture. And it gets even stranger to note that God actually instituted the Sanhedrin in Numbers 11:16-17, and commanded in Deuteronomy 17:9-12 that anyone who shows disrespect to a priest or judge should be killed. In summary, Jesus did not like to follow the law, and he didn't like those who believed he should either. Now, whether or not Jesus obeyed God may be open to debate according to many Christians, but what is hardly debatable is the issue of his prophecies. If Christ prophesied an event that was not fulfilled, then he cannot be called a prophet. As we saw in the previous video, Jesus predicted his own return in Matthew 16:27-28, stating that the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he has done. I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. In medieval times, Christians concocted the story of the wandering Jew in an attempt to fulfill this failed prophecy. In John 14:16 and 26, and chapter 16, verse 13, Jesus prays for the Holy Spirit to guide every believer to all truth. And in John 17:20-23, he prays for complete unity among his followers. One might argue that while these were prayers, they weren't necessarily prophecies, but it still presents some significant theological difficulties if you believe that Jesus' prayers were rejected or unanswered. Nonetheless, Jesus does prophesy unity among his followers in John 10:16, where he says that, "I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd." In case I need to remind you, there are Baptists, Pentecostals, Evangelicals, Lutherans, Calvinists, Catholics, Methodists, Presbyterians, Seventh-day Adventists, Anglicans, Episcopalians, and a whole host of other denominations, each claiming to base their different doctrines on the life and words of Jesus Christ. The Hebrew God warns against false prophets again in Deuteronomy 18:20-23. "A prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded him to say, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, must be put to death." You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously. The Old Testament does not support Jesus' liberal interpretations and revisions of God's law, and we can see in numerous New Testament passages that Christ made several prophecies that went unfulfilled. By the Bible's own standards, then, Jesus was a false prophet. In the next part of this series, which will be the final installment, we will wrap things up by addressing the common assertion that the disciples and New Testament authors would not have suffered and died for a lie. In the meantime, thanks for watching this video, and please rate and or comment if you enjoyed it.